I just warned you, Will. It was going to do that. The music cut off again.
I love that music.
I know. Well, this is what's happening when Neal builds a new clock that's not standard, and we lose our music in the 8 o'clock hour, and that's just how it goes.
But you do have an amazing studio.
Yes, it is.
These new
fantastic.
studios, I wish people could see this. These are beautiful studios.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us this morning. It's 8:07 on a Friday. Oh, it's May 30th, end of May.
Wow.
And it's the Neal Larson Show, but there's no Neal Larson in
Neal.
this. Yeah, the studio sans Neal.
He says he's helping a friend.
Yeah. I think he's just gallivanting through the Canadian forest.
Yeah, I think so, too.
Yeah, there he is.
He's got his little Robin Hood hat on.
Yeah.
His little bow and arrow. He's dancing through the tulips.
Yeah, that's
I can see him, totally Neal.
That voice you're hearing is Will Kesley. It might sound a little different than the last time Will and I did the show together.
Yeah.
And Will has agreed to come on, give everybody a cancer update. And with all of that, I'm sure you'll explain why your voice sounds different right now. But first off, how are you feeling this morning?
Actually, in the last 2-3 weeks, I've had probably my best weeks I've had in the last year. As far as just energy. Anybody that's gone through cancer knows the treatments themselves and just fighting it are horrendous on your energy and just on your body. And so I was pretty much bedridden up until, and this started, my definitive cancer diagnosis was in September, and up until about 2-3 weeks ago, I was pretty much bedridden. I'd be in bed, I'd get up and go to this event or that event, but I pretty much spent most of my time, 90% of my time in bed, just didn't have the energy. And in the last 3 weeks, we've been getting up and at it and doing things and working in the garage. And,
Great.
Something's changed, that's for sure. And we're hoping it's for the positive. But I certainly have more energy than I've had. And that's the hard part. It's hard to sit in bed, those who've had terminal cancer, and just know that you're dying. You're slowly dying to this disease and do nothing to fight back. But you can't. You can't get out of bed. So to get out of bed is a victory. And it really helps the mind. And one of the interesting things, Julie, I've done more mind battling with this cancer. This is my second battle with it than I ever did on my first one. This is more of a mind problem. I mean, I find myself, like, for example, I eat through a feeding tube. I can't eat anything. I'm eating a lot more now, but that's very little, about 5%.
Not enough nutrients via the
to
mouth.
live on. But we're working on that when I eat through a feeding tube. But there came a time when I actually became anorexic. And, as a trade, I'm a counselor and a neurotherapist, and so I understand what it is to be anorexic. And I got to the point where I couldn't eat. I didn't want to eat. I couldn't even put my feeding tube in.
Wow.
The mind just was like, we're done. We're done. It's over. It's time to shut this machine down. And I found it fascinating that all of a sudden I was fighting for my life against my own mind. And to dig into that, trying to figure out, how do I change that? How do I stop that? And I'll tell you how I did it was I started doing everything I loved in life. If I love airplanes, so I started hanging out with airplanes. I, loved spending time with my children, so I went and spent time with them. Everything that I loved in life, I started adding into life to let my brain know I wasn't done. Mm-hmm. My time's not up yet. I still have all these things I love doing. To try to get the brain to turn off this idea that, well, he's now terminal, so let's just shut everything down. But what was happening was my brain was shutting everything down. It was technically killing me, and I could not eat. I couldn't even put my feeding tube in.
Yeah, there is a clear connection between the physical body and the mental capabilities.
No question. And I had no idea until this one how much my mind was playing a role in my overall ability to survive.
For those who don't know the previous cancer story, will you fill them in on the first cancer diagnosis that you got, and then you beat it, and then you got this second diagnosis of cancer? They're a little bit different. The two cancers are different.
They're different, the same type of cancer, in the same area, but different. So 8 years ago, I was diagnosed with cancer in my throat. I never smoked, never drank, never any of those kind of things. And so it came to me as a horrible surprise. I'd gone to the doctor because I had a sore throat. I thought maybe I'd gotten strep throat or something. And they thought maybe it was just I had acid reflux. It was burning my throat. And so we played around with that for a couple of months. And then one day I said to him, there was a little camera probe in the office. And I said, he was my neighbor, by the way, so it made it easy. I'm like, Russ, just stick that camera down my throat. Let's just see what it is. And he's like, yeah, you want the camera down your throat? I'm like,
I'm brave. You can put a camera down my throat.
Why not? Let's just go see, And to my nightmare, that started what has been now 8 years of some of the most horrific living I've ever had to endure. And so he put the camera down there and came back and says, I don't know, but let's do a CAT scan. So we did a CAT scan, and then it was like, I don't know. And that's when you're like, uh-oh.
We've got 2 I don't knows, which means you're probably leaning to something not so great.
Yeah, so he went and did a biopsy, and I woke up from the treatment, from the surgery, and he said, I'm so sorry, I missed it. What you have is cancer. And that's just been 8 years of a very difficult time.
It was a difficult process to treat that cancer.
Yeah.
Then you...
And that cancer, by the way, for whatever reason, we only treated it... Well, no, there's a specific reason. We treated it only with radiation. I chose personally not to do... My wife and I chose that it was in our best interest not to do chemotherapy. That was a spiritual experience for us. And that's one interesting thing about this. If you allow yourself to have it when you're this sick, it is really the most special thing about being this sick has been how spiritually tender it has been. If you ever wonder if there's a God, get terminally ill and find out just how tender God is with you. And people are like, well, then he would take it away from you. I don't buy into that. I came to this earth to experience. And if I'm supposed to experience it and become like my Father in heaven, how would I not experience everything Christ experienced all things?
Yeah, he's already experienced this for you. If you're a Christian and you believe in the atonement, he's already experienced this.
So if I'm to come and learn and become like him, why would I not be given this chance also to experience this? So I have not seen it as being a victim of anything. Quite frankly, I've seen it as a very unique opportunity to become closer to deity. And that's what's happened. And I won't go into that on this shift with you, but on this, there has been so many special things that I never dreamt could ever happen to me, that have happened to me by being sick. I've had chances to touch the other side of the veil.
Mm-hmm. You've spoken with me a lot about that during your first cancer diagnosis, you had a near-death experience, and it shaped you.
It's changed me forever. Mm-hmm. And even now, I mean, you can tell it's very emotional. Mm-hmm. It's because it kept happening. It happened again and again. I kept having these very special experiences. And it made having cancer worth it, as odd as that sounds. Mm-hmm. Right? And so I have some people like, I don't get it. I don't understand how you're doing that. But that's what's made it something I could endure. It's made something very special, is in those times when I was at the worst, the times when I needed him the most, the times when I just didn't have anything left in me, when you have these very special experiences that brought me back to, I'm okay. I know God knows where I'm at. I know he's with me during this. It's an experience that I chose to have. I need to go through it. So let's get at it. And that's kind of where I'm at with it.
All right. So you had that first cancer diagnosis. Yep. Some very difficult experiences with that. You chose not to do chemotherapy during that cancer diagnosis. You did radiation, yep. Which for those who haven't had a loved one go through radiation, it kind of turns all of the tissue and everything into tree bark. Yep. It becomes very hard, not pliable, yep. Little scratchy, little irritated. The nerve endings are all wonky.
Yeah, especially hand and neck cancer, because it's right at my brainstem. It affected all my saliva. I have about 5% saliva. As you can tell now, it's also affected my ability to speak. Mm-hmm. I've lost all my hearing on my left side of my head. I've lost all my sinuses. I've lost, and I've had all this radiation to the brain. And so I have several things I'm having to manage to go through it that you wouldn't even think were an issue. But in fact, it's even odd that I got to do radiation twice. I went to the Mayo Clinic in Arizona, and they have a proton beam, and it was just different enough that it didn't set my autoimmune system off, because your immune system recognizes the radiation. In fact, me and the sunshine don't get along very well right now. when I get out in the sun, if I start getting a sunburn, my immune system thinks I'm in radiation, and I start getting sick again. I get radiation sickness all over again.
Interesting. Even the sun can affect that.
It's called radiation recall, and it thinks, oh, we're in radiation again, and it starts attacking things. It's really fascinating. So I've been very fortunate to be able to do it again, but in the areas where the second cancer was a little higher in my sinus, in my upper part of the roof of my mouth, and in my ears and things of that nature, I still had a crossover in my mouth. So my tongue and my throat in those areas got 2 different radiation treatments, and they're not healing. They don't know how to heal. Mm-hmm. Right? The radiation just damages them so much that they don't know how to heal. And so you have to learn to live with it.
Okay, so tell us about what the cancer treatment looks like now. You've been down at the Mayo Clinic. Some people recognize the Mayo Clinic from like Minnesota. This is actually in Arizona. It's an arm of the Mayo Clinic, and they're down there. You've had fantastic care.
I cannot speak more highly of the Mayo. I don't want to speak down about anybody else. I mean, I went to the University of Utah, and I had a surgeon there, Dr. Espaboni, who was really my first person to get in to my ear and figure out what was going on, and she was amazing, absolutely amazing. But my care got so difficult, I had to change gears, and I felt I needed to go to the Mayo. And so I asked my wife to try to see if we even get into the Mayo Clinic, and it was just remarkable we even got in. But getting in there, the doctors there, and the way they go about treatment is very, very unique. At first, it was hard to understand because every doctor is a specialist in like one area. So you don't have a doctor that really looks over you. Just one doctor does this, and he's a specialist in it, and that's all he does is that one thing. So I have like 7 doctors right now, and none of them, they meet like every day to talk about my care, but not one doctor is in charge of my care.
Right.
So who do I call if I need a prescription?
Yeah. If it's not working so well, which one should I ring?
Who do I call? But they're experts in that one area, very, very tight area. One thing to point out, after I had the first cancer, I then entered into these years of, I was number 16 in the county to get COVID. I had to have open heart surgery after COVID. COVID set my heart off, and out of nowhere, I also had a plugged heart, and I had to go have bypass surgery. I then had to have lung surgery. I then had sinus infection that I thought was from the lung surgery, and it turned out to be this very rare infection called inverted papilloma. And that inverted papilloma attacked my sinuses, but we didn't know it at that time. It was attacking my left ear, and it took out my hearing, and it took out my mastoid, and it tried to get into my brain, and it took out my eustachian tube, took out parts of my throat, and then out of nowhere, it switched into cancer.
Wow.
And so we were fighting that, thinking it was just this infection, this stuff called inverted papilloma. I'm only number 40 in the world to have inverted papilloma.
Would you quit trying to be an original, Will?
In this area, and I'm looking to God and going, are you kidding me? There's a whole story behind that, that I won't get into, but I kind of knew it was coming. Well, I didn't know it was coming.
Yeah.
I was informed that I was going to have some very difficult times as part of one of those very spiritual experiences where I got to cross the veil. I was given the choice to come back, but I was told I was coming back to some tremendous trials and tribulation, and so I had to make that choice, and I chose to come back. So when every one of these things came back to back to back to back to back, I just laughed. I was like, you can't make this stuff up.
No.
And when you tell your wife when that experience happens, here's what's coming, it's kind of like, man, I hope it kind of does come because I look like a giant liar, about having that experience. But then when it starts happening, it really is a very special thing. Crazy that you'd have an angel come to you in the middle of the night and tell you that
you got to come back and you're going to do this well.
You can either leave now if you want, or you can come back. But if you want to go back, here's what's coming. And then to try to explain that to your wife, you look like a cuckoo, right? You're kind of like this. I'm just a weirdo at this point. And then to watch it. And by the way, that happened before I was diagnosed with the first cancer. That happened 2 months before I was diagnosed with anything. There was nothing wrong with me.
Yeah.
And so to have that experience and then back to back to back to back, it's been overwhelming.
I just can't even express how much gratitude I have for you, Will, how much honor it's been to learn from you, and the honor is going to continue for me. I will continue to learn from you. I'm sure they're wanting to know. I've got 2 questions for you before we round this out. It is still a political talk show, and I'm sure that a lot of people are wondering, do you feel like COVID accelerated the second round of cancer?
Man, I have to question it heavily. Have to question it. I didn't end up taking the Moderna shot. I took 1 and 2. I didn't do anything more past that. At the time, you remember I was going to Ukraine?
Yes.
And trying to help refugees and trying to help people without food, water, shelter, and medical. And so I couldn't travel without doing the vaccinations. I couldn't get on a plane and go help. And so it was kind of a heart-wrenching decision. And I felt like I needed to go help the people in Ukraine. And so if the vaccination turned out to be horrible, I accepted that. It looks like it was horrible. I don't know that for a fact, but I do know following that, I immediately had to have open heart surgery because my heart went from 0, and we know it was 0 because just a few months before, I had a calcium score done on my heart because I was watching it because I had a lot of heart disease in my family, and I had hardly any blockage whatsoever. After I did the COVID vaccination, 6 months later, I was completely plugged in 2 arteries and another in a third, and had to go in for what was pretty much emergency. I mean, I was told not to move very much, and as soon as they could open up a surgical room, they'd get me in and have the operation. So I don't want to go with that conspiracy, yet I don't know how I don't.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would agree with you on that.
I have to believe that it did something to immune system, particularly when you look at what I got was this very rare thing called inverted papilloma that nobody's seen.
Yeah.
It came out of nowhere, and it was autoimmune based. And was it due to what?
Probably the COVID vaccine.
Probably the COVID vaccination did something to my immune system. But from that immune shot, I had open heart surgery. I had all these things come on board.
It was a cascade of events.
Cascade of things. But I don't regret doing it. I still am grateful for the 5 times I went to Ukraine. I'm still grateful for the people I met there. I don't try to get into the political side of the Ukraine conversation. I'm looking at the humanitarian side of it.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to get back. I've been on the ground. I've been shelled. They've tried to kill me twice while I've been there. I just distaste what's happening there. Yeah. It's just wrong in so many ways that one guy, a dictator, can decide he's going to ruin the lives of millions and millions of people. It's just wrong in today's society.
It is wrong. Okay, we've got about a minute and a half left. Tell me, where do you go from here?
Oh, where am I right now? Well, they've told me I'm terminal.
Go ahead and feel your emotions. I'm going to tell everyone how brave Will has been through this. He's been amazing. And I appreciate that you're fighting this head on, even with them talking to you like that.
I hate saying that word.
Yeah.
And so I say it because they've honestly said it to me. But it scares me. But I don't believe them. I honestly don't believe them. I think they have it wrong. I think they've seen what's the reason they're telling me I'm terminal. I think it's part of my old cancer coming through. And I'll know that more. Coming in a few weeks, I go back for another PET scan. And they want me to start more treatment, and I'm just not ready to do that. I don't feel I have the strength to do it. And I don't feel it's right. Spiritually, I don't feel it's right to do it. So I'm going to take a day at a time. I'm going to enjoy life, and I'm going to live life to its fullest, understanding that that may happen. But I honestly, in my heart of hearts, I don't think it's happening that way.
I love your attitude, Will.
It scares me, honestly, but something spiritually tells me I'm not gone in October. And that's when it's supposed to all come to head. I honestly don't. And I hope in November I can come back and be on this show and discuss it again.
Yeah, let's have a heck of a Thanksgiving celebration in November.
And so they want me to go to more treatment. They think they can extend my life out. They don't know how long. And right now I'm just not ready to go do that. They want to do more chemotherapy, and it just doesn't feel right to my soul. And so I'm not going to. They're going to have to do some heavy convincing. They want to do immunotherapy. I might do that. We'll see. But right now, I'm taking in life as if I am going to be gone in 6 months, and I'm learning to just love everybody around me and look at life as if I was dying.
The Tim McGraw song.
Yep, and I'll tell you, it is a gift. A gift to look at life as if you're dying. I took life for granted. I ran full steam and never realized that someday it would come to an end. And so everything's different for me right now. Everything's more beautiful, honestly. I love deeper. I feel love deeper. My relationships are deeper. Everything special is happening because I have cancer. No regrets. No regrets.
We have so much to learn from you, Will. Thank you. I think there's a lot of people who would have been intimidated by coming on while you're in the middle of this, and I am so incredibly grateful for you. Like I said, it's an honor to learn from you.
Thank you.
It's been an honor. You were an integral part. I'm going to get emotional here. You were an integral part of getting me and Neal to this station.
Yep, and I love it. And thank you for sharing your love and with me. You've been incredibly positive with me, and I love everything about you and Neal. I've been grateful for you and grateful for your friendship.
I'm a better person, Will, for having you in my life.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll shed these tears and get going. We've got a big segment coming up next. We're going to be joined for Studio 4 covers by Mountain Strings Bluegrass. Going to hear a little bit of banjo, a little bit of fiddle, and we'll celebrate life along with Mountain Strings Bluegrass on News Talk 107.9. All right, we're back on News Talk 107.9. I'm Julie Mason, filling in for Neal Larson today. Usually you hear me and Neal in this segment. It's our Studio 4 cover segment where we invite local artists on, but Neal is in Canada, so he's not here today. But I am joined by some fantastic folks in the region. They're Mountain Strings Bluegrass. I'm just going to go through everyone on in the band real quick before we hear from you. We've got Teresa Mortensen. She's going to be playing the fiddle and singing for us today. Her husband, Monty, am I making a good assumptions there? Okay. Her husband, Monty, is on guitar, also going to be singing. We've got Jerry on the mandolin. He's going to offer some vocals for us today. Tom, he's on banjo, which I think we're going to have quite a little solo with that today with this song, so I'm excited. And then Jack on the bass. Hello. Who would like to be the spokesman? Great.
Good morning.
Great. Come on up. Tell us all about Mountain Strings Bluegrass.
Well, we're a 5-piece ensemble, drawing on a diverse background of musical influences. We try to bring those musical influences together in a bluegrass format, which typically is highlighted by banjo players, guitar, fiddle, mandolin, and bass. Occasionally other instruments will get fit in there, but those are the 5 traditional instruments that you see. We draw on a repertoire of a variety of songs, kind of like the whole bluegrass genre does. If you go to a bluegrass festival, it's not uncommon to see deadheads there and rock and roll players and folk players as well as traditional bluegrass. And in our group, Monty is, I kind of call him the cowboy singer. He brings that background with him. Tom is a traditional bluegrass banjo player from Virginia, and he always drags us back into the traditional part of things. Teresa has a background in old-time fiddle and is a great singer. I'm a country guitar player that didn't own an acoustic guitar until a few years ago. But they drug me into the bluegrass form and made me buy a mandolin. This is Jack Polson.
It's a hostage program.
It is. It's a hostage program. Jack Polson here, he grew up listening to a lot of the same things that I did, and when he retired from being a full-time farmer, he bought himself a guitar and a bass, and this group has been together about a year now.
Fantastic. I love that. So you've got some upcoming gigs that's how I found you guys. I went to a calendaring event, saw that you guys were going to be at some upcoming events, and I was like, we need them on Studio 4 covers. So why don't you let us know what your upcoming events are?
Sure. Well, the next event is this weekend, actually. It's put on by the Mortensons up in Rigby. It's their annual camp out where people bring their campers or their tents or show up, and they'll be jamming and food all day long for about 3 days there. Then on the 16th or the 18th of June, we have Music in the Park in Blackfoot, which we've played before. On the 26th, Music in the Park in American Falls. Then July 2nd, Cafe Sabor up in Island Park. August 18th, we're looking forward to being part of the South Fork Fest in Rary, and Tom's even written a song that we're in honor of the South Fork River that we're looking forward to performing. And then on the 5th through the 7th, we have Bluegrass on the Snake up in Rigby, a 3-day extravaganza of bluegrass.
Okay, let's revisit the one that is this weekend, because I know after people hear you, they're going to want to, go be part of this. Where is that camp out at in Rigby?
It's at our house in Rigby. The address is 4053 East, 400 North in Rigby. We've got plenty of room for a few campers, and there's a
tents, anything.
We've got tents, we've got campers, we've got lots of room for jamming, and we've got potlucks going all weekend. So
great,
and all that information is on mountainstringsbluegrass.com.
Okay, great. What are we playing today? What are we singing?
Well, we're going to do an old traditional tune called The Old Swinging Bridge. It was written in the 50s. Some say in the 50s. Some say it was an old British or an English folk song. But it's been covered by old-time bluegrass artists like Danny Paisley, James King, kind of a second-generation group called the Lonesome River Band. Our version features Tom playing rapid-fire banjo and then vocal harmonies by Monty, Teresa, and myself.
Okay, can't wait at all. All right, let's turn it over to Mountain Strings Bluegrass.
The old mill stream, oh, the years have gone by. I still keep remembering here in my heart, wondering if you wonder why. Memories haunt me each night in my dreams. Seems I can still see you there. Your loving arms held out to me, smiling so sweet and so fair. Seems I can still see you there. Your loving arms held out to me, smiling so sweet and so fair. Your loving arms held out to me, smiling so sweet and so fair.
You guys, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. All right, let us know, where can people find you on social media?
Well, the best place probably to go is mountainstringsbluegrass.com, but we're also on YouTube under Mountain Strings Bluegrass, Instagram, Mountain Strings Bluegrass, and Facebook, Mountain Strings Bluegrass. There's a thing there.
Could you make it any easier for everybody? All right. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate you being here today. And we'll be back after the commercial break on News Talk 1079.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Hey, it's Brad from Now 105.1 and QP99. I'm in the studio here. I love our studios, by the way. Ranger Rick back there. There's Neal and Julie doing their thing. Hey, when you want to advertise on the radio, what do? You call the radio station, right? But what do you do when you want to advertise on Facebook and Instagram and Hulu and Disney Plus and Peacock and the other TV streaming services? You can kind of click around on them and make guesses or read books or take courses online on how to do that advertising. Or you could call us at the radio station. At Sandhill Media, we take care of your local radio and digital marketing. So reach out to us at sandhillmediagroup.com and we'll make sure that your message gets heard and seen wherever your customers are.
And we're back on News Talk 1079. I'm Julie Mason, filling in for Neil Larson. I'm always here anyway, but filling in for Neil Larson. He's decided to make a run for the border. I think he's actually at the border of Canada and Idaho right now.
Yeah, he's muling stuff again.
Yep, he is. We need to be a little bit worried about him, don't we?
We should.
Yeah.
We should. I'm going to put somebody on him.
Yeah, that voice you're hearing is Sergeant Brian Lovell. He's joining me for the hour from the Bonneville County Sheriff's Office.
Good morning.
Hey, Brian, how are you?
Hey, good. Stunt double mode. I even dressed down.
You did. You look like you're totally back in a radio studio.
I was trying to do my best to look like Neil, act like Neil, stunt double on the radio like Neil.
So the bar is set low, is what you're saying.
I roll out of bed and there, I'm there. Yeah.
Well, that brings to mind, you have some radio roots. Tell everybody about that.
I did a little bit of radio back in the day. It was a different group of stations, but locally here, and a lot of people didn't know that. They either knew me from the sheriff's office or law enforcement, or they knew me from radio. And unless it was like family or people I worked with, they didn't make that connection too often. But it's been more than 13 years maybe since I've been on the air. It's been a minute. But for about 18 years, for the better part of 18 years, I did part-time radio on 94.9 and 96.1 and bounced around a couple of those groups of stations. Started in college down at ISU and just kept doing it part-time on the side. It was my part-time fun.
You're good at it.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite music genre?
I kind of like it all. I in high school I DJ'd dances and a few things here and there. I still do some announcing for Mad Marvin's figure 8 races, and I've done a lot of his events for 20 years or so. But I was doing the occasional wedding and just events, our policeman's ball and things like that. I've kind of emceed and done some of that stuff. But, as far as music and all that, I've kind of just been about almost anything and everything. So I grew up in Ryrie, and me and my friends, we were into the 80s hair band stuff. But I like the old 80s sound music. I like the 90s. I just like everything, how it's graduated through. But probably my go-to is the 80s rock type stuff, like Sammy Hagar, Van Halen. That's my go-to stuff.
You're going to have a whole slew of people listening that are with you on that one.
That's the top of the list right there, Sammy Hagar.
There you go.
Kiss. I'm a Kiss fan. So.
I have a almost 3-year-old grandson.
Yeah?
Yeah. The other day, I was talking to him on the phone, and he sang Beastie Boys for me.
Right on. Yes.
And I was telling Neil that, and he's like, does that make you nervous? And I said, have you listened to today's music? I'm really okay with Beastie Boys.
Yeah, it's probably a little better balanced. I don't know how you describe that.
Yeah, his dad was pretty proud.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
there
awesome.
we go.
So now it's your job to go, okay, Beastie Boys, now you get into the classics like the Kiss and the Aerosmith and all that.
Yeah, I can open him up to some other things as well.
Oh, yeah.
All right, we talked about the border.
All right.
Neil going to the border, crossing Canada. I just got a text from him. I'm guessing he's going to say he made it through. He made it past the agents.
Okay.
So let's talk about the border. How has the fentanyl flow stemmed since President Trump has really basically put it below 200? Some days it's below 300 crossings at the southern border. We have a problem at the Canadian border too, but with this kind of lockdown on immigration, are you feeling a difference yet?
Oh yeah, I think we're starting to see that. I mean, it takes time to cycle through and feel the effects there. And of course, you know, the people that are in that business, they're probably thinking of new and exciting ways to get that stuff here. I think we're probably seeing more, stuff through the mail or delivery services, UPS, FedEx type of things. I know we've intercepted some of those, some illegal drugs through that means. So I'm sure they see this coming. They're watching what's going on, and they want to keep doing business. So they're trying to figure out new and exciting ways to do that, and we'll stumble across that. And that's the nature of what we do. A lot of times we're kind of behind the eight ball on that. You know, we don't know what we don't know until you discover it and get in on it. And of course, you know, law enforcement's by and large, pretty proactive that way and trying to connect the dots and put those pieces together to stop that. But we're still seeing fentanyl. We're seeing different variations of that. We're still getting some overdoses and things in our area. And, it's not, it might have slowed down a little bit, but it's still a problem. It's not just going to instantly stop by that. So it's definitely a help. Back in the day when we were seeing a lot of meth labs and things like that, a lot of those precursors and the way those were sold and the way those were regulated here and in the United States and in Mexico, that slowed down a lot of the local homegrown meth lab activity here. There could be still some of that now, but we saw a change in our area or in the region probably just when those things were a little better controlled and regulated, and it was a little hard. You're just making it harder for the criminals and those drug organizations to get that stuff, and so there's cause and effect there, and then they find a new way to do it, a new way to get it here, and and we're working on new ways to try and investigate and intercept those things.
Yeah. You mentioned that you're working on stopping it through the mail. Would you be giving away insider secrets if you told us a little bit about that?
And I'm not super involved with those investigations. I know that they go. We've always had, here and there, things found through the mail, through FedEx, through UPS. Those kind of. The people that work for those places stumble onto those things. And so we've always had investigations going through there. Yeah, that's how some of our fentanyl and some of that stuff that is entering our area we know is coming from China. We've intercepted some over the last several years that we know is directly connected, come from China, over the internet or bought over the internet or on the dark web or whatever. And so I've not personally been super involved in the ins and outs of how we're detecting those and watching those. But I know that when, we work with a lot of other law enforcement entities from the federal, state, and local level, and we're all talking, and they're all, when they start seeing commonalities here and connecting dots and identifying organizations of people, they're definitely feeding that information up and down, trying to identify it and go after those people wherever they may be. But a lot of times it's just based on what gets taken off on a traffic stop here locally, and you identify someone with that, and that connects this dot to this dot to this dot, and so on, and hopefully is real productive. And that's just what we're catching. We know that we're not able to catch everything all the time because we're still going to overdose calls and responding to those types of things. So
that leads me to two questions. I'll ask two parts here. We'll start with the Narcan. Mm-hmm. I know that for conservative audiences, they don't love that we push that as an option because that feels like that fuels the ability to use drugs. But how is that being implemented in Idaho and used in Idaho? And if someone has a loved one that's potentially they're worried that they're using drugs and might overdose, how do they get a hold of that?
Well, I think through the East Idaho Public Health is kind of in the conduit through there. I think there's still the sort of outlet for that there, or they know the resource where to send people to get that, because there's a lot of like church organizations and businesses and our schools, and it's pretty sad we have to have that in our schools. But the nature of fentanyl is so dangerous, and so like it doesn't care who you are, it doesn't care how much you've been used. If you get that and you're dying, you need that Narcan like now. And if you accidentally have some contact with it or something, and you're that person that has that bad reaction to that, it's going to react real severe. You want that Narcan there now. And what we're seeing, we're going to some of these overdose calls where, before law enforcement, before ambulance personnel arrive, someone in their household has administered Narcan 1 or 2 doses. Law enforcement's, give them a couple of doses of that. Ambulance crews give them a couple, multiple doses before you get those people to the hospital and get them saved. And
saves lives.
Yeah, and that's what that tells you is what, 1 dose of Narcan used to be pretty effective and get you stable, to get you to the hospital, to get the continual drip of Narcan, to get that out of your system and flush that out and keep you going so everything doesn't shut down. Now you're seeing multiple doses before it even takes effect, and that just tells you the fentanyl, the types of things that are mixed in there are more and more potent. And or there's less. It's odd because some of these pills you take off are really fine detailed. They look better and more put together, more defined, and more. They look like they come from a factory more so than the actual drugs that come from a pharmaceutical company that has quality control. So they're real, detailed about how.
There's going to be like a little break line between them and maybe some numbers on it. It looks really official.
Yeah. So they're real detailed in how this looks coming out of their pill mill, but they don't care about quality control of what goes in there or how it's mixed, or, you don't know what's in there. So I find it odd that it's really detailed in that to make it look authentic or look like how they want it to look. But they don't care what goes into it. They don't care how hot it is or not. They just know it's selling, and they don't care that it's killing off people and overdosing people. So, but Narcan in our area, that's been, I think, some of our numbers and statistics that we're tracking here and statewide, there's probably more deployment and use of Narcan than we're aware of, because it's readily available, and that's a good thing. So people are probably able to self-rescue or whatever, and so they may not present themselves to us, or we may not get a call to 911 for us, an ambulance to respond. They may just go to the hospital. And, we may add to some of our stats through that, but, excuse me, fighting a cold a little bit. Sorry, I keep choking on it. But anyway, okay. I think, having that readily available is because that's such a dangerous substance and it's so lethal and potent right out the gate, or right as soon as you use it, touch it, handle it, that it's just more important to have that Narcan available in a lot of places. So.
That was going to be my follow-up question here, because with the lethality of these drugs, how strong they are, how much lethality is manufactured into them, has that changed the way you train law enforcement? They got to get gloves on quicker, everything?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we've always, well, at least through my career, in the last 3 decades of doing this, over time, you start recognizing you got to be more and more careful of what you handle, what you touch. It's not like in the movies from the 80s where they, cut the bag of Coke open and tasted with their pinky and go, that's the stuff.
That's good stuff.
No, that doesn't happen, because you got to handle these things with gloves, because you don't know what's going to go in them. And we're all people. It may react differently with me than my coworkers or someone else, So someone could be in the room with it and for whatever reason it gets, into the air and they start choking on it and everybody else is fine, right? So, that's the myth there, is these drugs, affect everybody the same way. but it's really not. It's one person could be more susceptible to just the handling, the touch of it, or they touch it and for some reason it gets on their skin and that gets into their mouth or into their pores or something. That's a cause for concern. So definitely our training, especially since all of our deputies, most all law enforcement is carrying Narcan, that when you're carrying that and you get training to use that comes, along with the personal protective
self-administration
gear, like gloves and, careful, safe handling of it, safe testing of it. A lot of times we're not, if we can avoid handling it, they'll test it with equipment that we have that handles it to a very minimal extent, and then you package it and send it to a controlled laboratory where they can test it even further because they've got better equipment, more safe environment to do that. And it's not just with that. It's in case it's in there. It could be with other chemicals and other things. And there's a whole world of hazmat training that we all kind of go through and recognize. And that's just one of those real lethal factors that I think we're a whole lot more cognizant of in the last 5 to 10 years than we ever were.
We've talked a lot about drugs and fentanyl and the way that law enforcement reacts to that. In my conversation with members of law enforcement, they've mentioned how there has been a strong increase in domestic violence calls in the area as well. Are you seeing that through the Bonneville County Sheriff's Office?
Yeah, I think it ebb and flows. I think some of our it's like a lot of our calls for service. There's sometimes no real defined rhyme or reason. I feel like it goes with big weather changes, changing of the season, different things going on. Like there's a lot of factors
holidays
there.
Holidays
and I don't know if there's like a particular time of the year everybody decides to have custody disputes or whatever, but those things I think were more so in the last several years. I think people start ramping up and building up and have frustrations with each other, and they're handling it, or they're not able to handle it very well. And so I think that builds up a little bit faster. People are a little bit quick to melt down and go nuclear than ramp up and go ballistic slowly, so to speak, So, we get called to those things and we're trying to intervene, keep the peace and say, hey, don't do this, do this. Here's resources. Here's the way to go and handle this problem. Here's the way not to handle it because this is not helping, right? Things that get you thrown in jail for it.
Yeah, you're probably far more of a social worker in 2025 than you were 3 decades ago.
Yeah, I think that's always been a hat that we wear. It's just we have a lot better resources. Of course, the resources grow with and evolve, of course, with the way society evolves. But, we really promote the, hey, call soon, call early, get us there before things really get out of control. Don't get frustrated if there's people call and want us to instantly just take people to jail just because they say so. And we can't do that all the time, but we would rather intervene and say, hey, let's everybody take a time out, take a breath. Let's go our separate ways. Let's figure this out. Let's give you some good ideas to work with or good practices to do rather than let this continue to melt down and escalate and get someone thrown in jail, especially when you got kids involved, because it's not doing your kids any good. It's not helping that situation. We understand people are going to fight. Couples are going to have disagreements. They may stay together. They may get divorced. They may get back together, and that's all up to them. We just would rather intervene before things get to meltdown and physical abuse and violence, and to where we don't have to step in and protect things and take people to jail. It's a little more difficult these days since there's court cases that that came into effect 20-something years ago where there's like 5 misdemeanor exceptions where we could arrest based on probable cause for something that happened out of our presence. And one of those was domestic violence related things. And there was a court case within the last few years that changed all that, and so it makes it a little more difficult to. That was huge when that happened because you could intervene in those domestic violence cases, and if you've got evidence of physical domestic violence and
broken chairs, marks on a female or a male,
then you could take some action there because in the nature of domestic violence things, some people are scared to get away. They're scared to talk to law enforcement. They're scared to go get help at the domestic violence center. They don't know how to get out of their situation, and even if they would get called there to get help, but they don't act like they want help, and we know they want help. We just can't force it. But when we could, arrest based on those things, when that was an exception for misdemeanor domestic violence, that was effective, at least taking care of that problem and giving them a chance to space, and a way to make a plan to get out, and it's not the end of the world. It's something everybody can overcome. Definitely don't want that to happen, but now, court cases and things have changed, and that's made it more difficult to do. We can issue citations, based on that, and we can help get people separated. And if we need to, if it becomes a felony level thing, like attempted strangulation, or you've got a significant injury, then that's the felony level of domestic battery. And we can take action on that because it would be felony level things there. But there's kind of a gap there in the middle where there's
no right answer.
People know just how far to push it, and they know that the other half is too scared to leave or too scared to get help. And sometimes you got other people trying to intervene, and it's intervention in the right ways. And so we just have to change the way we do business. We've been changing that. We have other methods to do what we need to do. If we need to do, talk to the judge and get a warrant and go forward that way, so we're working around it and doing things, but that's the challenges of this business.
Yeah, always changing. This looks like a good place to take a little bit of a break.
Sure.
If you've got questions for Sergeant Brian Lovell with the Bonneville County Sheriff's Office, go ahead and send those in via text on the Stones Automotive Group call and text line. That number is 208-542-1079, and we'll be back after the break. And we're back on News Talk 107.9. I'm Julie Mason. Brian Lovell's doing a little bit of chair dancing over there.
Yeah. The grooving music.
Yeah, there we go. Sergeant Brian Lovell from the Bonneville County Sheriff's Office is joining me for the show this last hour. Before we get back into law enforcement and everything, I need to talk about Town and Country Gardens because they pay me to do that. So let's have a chat about that. Neal and I both use the 4-Step Lawn program from Town and Country Gardens. And I have the best looking lawn that I have had since I purchased that home in late 2020. We gutted the whole thing. The lawn needed some serious help, and I have totally revitalized that with the help of the 4-Step Lawn program from Town and Country Gardens. I would highly recommend it if you're not using it.
I'm gonna come over and take a nap on it later.
Okay, that's great. Yeah. Bring it. I have tons of trees. Bring yourself a little hammock, and you'll be good to go.
There's nothing like a good nap on a nice lawn in the shade.
Oh, it's so nice. So you can get started on the 4-Step Lawn program at Town and Country Gardens right now. You're not too late. You can throw down those humates. Then you could do step 2 in a couple of days, and you'd be right on track. Step 3 is later on in the summertime, and step 4 is your winterizing. So make sure you stop on down there. They've also got beautiful flowering baskets and all of your lawn and garden needs, especially your garden needs if you're planning this weekend. They're south of Idaho Falls, across from the malting plant on Yellowstone Highway. All right, Sergeant Lovell. Mm-hmm. Do you like are you Brian on the radio or are you Sergeant Lovell?
I'm being called all kinds of nasty things. It's okay. Yeah. Oh, whatever's easy.
We won't drudge up all those other names that everybody calls you. All right. I wanted to talk a little bit. I absolutely will not ask you about some of the difficult police interaction situations that have happened in East Idaho over the last little bit. I won't make you weigh in on that. But I do want to ask you, what kind of things is the Sheriff's Office doing? What kind of training are you implementing? So if presented with a possible officer shooting or, just sometimes it's just a really violent scuffle between police and the suspect. So what kinds of training are you guys doing at Bonneville County Sheriff's Office to be ahead of this?
Yeah. Well, what I feel like we've had a great practice in is really just a constant evaluation of how we do things, and not just based on things we've been involved in or incidents we've had, but other incidents around us or around the country. I think, by and large, as a profession, agencies are really in this. The nature of this business is you never learn everything there is to know about this job. It's a constant learning environment. We have constant upkeep and training. There's different high liability things that we have to keep up on. But at the same time, you look at incidents around the country, active shooter things, school shootings, you look at officer involved shootings, you look at the way people are dealing with mental health stuff around the country. And, we take a look at those things and how laws and court rulings and things change and technology as that evolves. All of those things are in this constant evaluation process that we do to try and implement to help us be more efficient, help us be safe and more effective at what we do. We want to keep our people safe, of course. We've implemented, tasers several years ago and tools that, tasers, for one example, is a tool that's probably prevented a lot of shootings for us and probably across the country. I've been in several incidents where the use of a taser, had we not had that tool and intervened with that, would have definitely resulted in a shooting. And, so that's the goal, is to try and avoid those things. There's no agency or officer, there's no one in their right mind that could say they want to be involved in these things and have that aftermath and the trauma.
Don't you think that's one of the misnomers in all of this, that the police really want to fire their gun?
Yeah, they think when things happen, you really have a lot of people coming out and saying, "Oh, yeah, that's what they're," that's what they want to do. They wake up every day and they just want to go shoot them up, bang, bang. And I'm like, if you follow that logic, then we would have a lot more shootings than we do. And it's been slow this year. I've been tracking, officer-involved shootings around our state for the last several years, and we've had an increase of them. I think we had about 24 last year, 20 the year before, like 18 before that, and I think we're up to 6 or 7 this year so far. So
trending down a little bit, then.
Trending down, but and I don't know. It's hard to say why. Sometimes that follows economic and political cycles. Sometimes that follows just the way society evolves, or how they feel about things. But those are things I think we and law enforcement in Idaho does a great job at looking at and trying to keep up and evolve with that sort of infrastructure. And there's always, debriefings and things that you learn from incidents, and you go back and there's anytime you have an incident, there's a lot of luck. Nothing's going to go perfectly. Nothing's going to go like you see it on TV. There's always going to be something that could have gone better or gone differently. And a lot of times the outcomes are, by and large, the outcomes are good or safe and okay because you rely on a little bit of luck, and even you learn from the things that come out okay. You take and debrief those things and go, let's change the way we do this to make sure if we get into this again, we're better ensured that it's going to be okay and have a good outcome there. So I think that's the nature of what law enforcement and public safety does, is evaluate those things and try to improve, and that's great for the community. I feel like that's part of our duty, part of our job. I think that's how most agencies feel. And you can see the results in that, in how we do things. But like I was saying before, we're behind the 8 ball. We're catching criminals doing things and keying in on their method of operation for this, and this. At the same time, you've got double that amount of criminals out there finding new and exciting ways to victimize people that we just don't know about yet, or we don't know how to intervene or counteract. And so, it just sort of forces us to continually evolve that way.
Yeah. One other question before we take a commercial break. You might know I do a true crime podcast, which I cover so many cases across the nation, some internationally, and not all county officials, not all law enforcement have body cams. It just kind of depends on if they're funded and what the rules are in that area. What is the current status of body cams with Bonneville County Sheriff's Office?
We have all of our patrol deployed deputies all have body cams and cameras in the cars, and a lot of our detectives and everybody that's handling law enforcement things, we're using that technology a lot, just to not only to record interviews with people, but in interactions and traffic stops and all those calls, but collecting evidence, and we're using those for pictures, those kind of data systems or storage systems, or collecting a lot of our, we just have a ton of digital evidence, more so than we used to have. And so we're pretty fortunate to have good technology that way and good resources that way. And it is technology. Those things can fail and do fail here and there. Storage is a big thing to deal with, and costs are a big thing to deal with in there. And
that seems to be the big reason, not because in the cases that I follow, not because they don't want to wear them, they're just not funded enough.
Yeah.
And the equipment gets old.
Yeah, storage is a lot. Storage is a lot of money, and then things get outdated. Software gets outdated. You go buy a computer today, it's outdated tomorrow. You've got to keep up with those things.
Right. I have a couple more technology questions for you that I'll throw your way after the commercial break. If you have questions for Sergeant Brian Lovell with the Bonneville County Sheriff's Office, text the Stones Automotive Group call-in text line. That's 208-542-1079. All right, we're back on News Talk 107.9, and as the previous segments, Brian Lovell is still with me, Sergeant Brian Lovell from the Bonneville County Sheriff's Office. So thanks for being here, Brian.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Having me, yeah.
Okay, I promised that I had another technology question. This one's a little bit different. It's based upon social media. So in the past few years, we've had an uptick on these local websites where you will see like City of Idaho Falls page, or not even that, like Life in Idaho Falls page on Facebook, or I Love Rexburg in Rexburg or whatever. And it seems like the second anyone sees the red and blues,
what's going on?
They want to know what's going on.
Doing?
Is that affecting the work that you guys are doing negatively? Is it even doing anything? Is it positive? What's going on with that?
It can be positive. I mean, I have mixed emotions about it. A lot of, for the most part, I think it's people being nosy. Like a lot of those things, and this is me, I'm like, if it doesn't affect you, if you're just driving by, if it affected you, someone would get a hold of you. You would be involved and you would know. But why? And even if you are involved, why would you go throw all of that information out there? Because all that does is open you up for everybody to start trolling you and having their opinion and holding public court about what you did, what you didn't do, and you may not even have any significant involvement in it at all. And I think maybe that's the reason why we got more domestics and more fights. I don't know. I think it's a mechanism that brings people to melt down unnecessarily. And I've been joking for a while that, social media is the best place for the worst information. And that definitely brings out the worst in people with some of comments and some of what people say. And they have a right to say it, and that's great, and I think it's, as human beings, people need to get a lot better at managing their emotions and deciding what's going to push their buttons and what's worth pushing their buttons, because I think you got people out there looking for people's buttons to push on purpose. And I think it can affect our job, because people will screenshot things on these pages and send them to the sheriff's office page. Hey, did you know this is going on? Did you know this is going on? And I'm like, I'm glad that I'm kind of in the know that people are talking about this stuff, so I can answer it or come out and clarify things. But a lot of that, I'm real careful about engaging in a lot of that, because some people are just looking for something to take and twist into whatever they think it is, and they're really not involved. They're not there. They don't know. I've had people, I've clarified things in a message to someone, and they still disagree with me, and they're not even remotely close to anything to do with that. I'm clarifying factual things that we've investigated and that we know, and they still don't believe me and disagree. So that's their right. That's fine. They can do that, but I just can't believe that's time you can't get back in your brain. That's time you just can't get back in your life, and I just can't believe how much people are so engaged in that. And I'm like, man, meanwhile, the world's still turning and you're missing life.
All my thing is like, man, there's a lot of hobbies that you could take up.
Yeah, like you're missing out on the roses are growing and you're not even smelling them or nothing while they're here. They're gone.
Yeah, we're going to be right back to winter pretty darn quick. How do you get information to people? I know that there's an app for Bonneville County Sheriff's Office, so talk about that.
Yes, we have an app. It's in the App Store. It's called Idaho Sheriff Connect. And if you download that app to your mobile device, there's several sheriff's offices that you can follow in there, and we are one of those. So you can pick and set up notifications for each one, depending on which one you want to pay attention to. So I use that app quite a bit to push out safety information, and it has links to some of the most used stuff on our website. So I push information out, through news releases. I'll push them out through that mobile app and a notification there. You can also sign up to get our news releases on email from our website at BonnevilleSheriff.com. Excuse me. And then a lot of things I share on our Facebook platform and Instagram and a YouTube channel. Not necessarily all of the news releases go out on there. That's a lot of stuff we're involved in, or unless it's an incident that we're seeking the public's help in tips and information.
Maybe a missing persons or something like that. Mm-hmm.
So, but we have a lot of when there are emergencies or area emergencies, are real important things that we need to let people know about. I'll utilize all of those platforms. Probably the primary ones are everything through the app and the website, through the news release posts right there, and that's where I'm shoving. If I'm shoving it on there, I'm shoving that usually to all of the media sources in the area, and everybody's pretty good about putting that out. But you can, people can get the app and sign up there. There's a lot of community. This is what I'm finding. I'm loading a lot of community resources on the app and on our website. There's a couple of tabs that are community resources or resources. So, you've got links to local government pages, the counties, the cities, and
it could be a useful hub.
But we've got resources for mental health stuff and substance abuse resources in the area. Waterways safety and off-road highway vehicle laws and a lot of those things. I'm starting to. I find myself loading more and more things in there based on what people email and message me to ask us. Hey, what's the law on this? What do we do here? I'm like, well, here's the link, and I send that to all of our patrol teams and our jail teams, our deputies, because they get asked those same questions. And so they use that as a resource point.
Let me show you.
You might look there, and we might not be the resource, but law enforcement tends to be the default go-to.
The 411.
Hey, I don't know what it. And so I try to put at least links to some of those things, on there for people to use. Homeless resources and shelter resources and
such.
All of that. So we want to make that a useful tool to connect with the community because those are the things we're interacting with people, and there's so much of that. It's hard for all of our team to know all of those things all of the time. And so we try to make that helpful, not for us, just for us, but for community as well.
Yeah. You've got about a minute. We've had a couple of questions come in. I'll address one of them. They're asking about human trafficking. That's a federal issue, not a Bonneville County Sheriff's Office issue.
There are federal and state laws, and they are quite intensive type investigations with a lot that you have to have. It's not, that is something that we investigate, we pay attention to, we work on, we encourage reporting on that at all levels. And I think what we struggle with is people that don't want to report that, or they report they think this is going on, and we go investigate. We don't find anything. It takes some investigation, and of course you have to meet elements of that crime. Yeah. But that is a significant thing that we pay attention to, and when we get those cases, we're working on as diligently as we can. As much with the information that we have available. Those are difficult to get a lot of information to go through and prosecute, but we've done it. So
okay, 30 seconds. A lot of graffiti around the area.
Yeah.
Is it gang related?
Yeah, some of it is. Some of it is people being artistic. Some of it is probably making a statement based on their gang or affiliation with whoever. Mm-hmm. And Idaho Falls Police has done a great job at they've caught 2 or 3 people doing that lately, and that's nice. So you can catch some people, hold them accountable for that, and be on top of that. And really, it's come because the community's proactive in looking and reporting those things when they happen, and getting us information that we can go forth and use.
All right. We'll take our final break here on News Talk 107.9. All right. Sergeant Brian Lovell, we got just under a minute. Tell me, what haven't we covered today that you would like to tell the people of Bonneville County?
Safe driving. Like we're almost 70 fatals, I think, around the state, and a lot of them preventable. A lot, I think about 25% or so far are with unbelted occupants that resulted in a fatal result, and so unnecessary. You know those safety systems, the technology in these cars, they're built to all work together, and paying attention to your driving, making that small decision before you put the car in gear, put your seatbelt on. That could have a big benefit if you end up being involved in a crash. You know, because people need to wrap their head around how much trust they put in the rest of the world to stay in their lane, to drive responsibly, to pay attention. You've got to do the same thing and have good driving habits, and put yourself at the lowest risk possible and be the most prepared to walk away from those things.
Great. All right. Thank you, Sergeant Brian Lovell from the Bonneville County Sheriff's Office,
Thanks
for joining
me.
Everybody, have a safe weekend out there. We'll be back on Monday, and Neil Larson will be joining me from Canada.
If he's not in